Hello everyone. Today's topic is uh, narcissistic abuse. It's a very sensitive topic for many people because many people don't realize that they're being victimized in their own life. What happens is people adjust with the people that they are born into. What I'm trying to say is when a person get into a relationship with somebody else other than their own family, the experience that they have makes them realize that that is something wrong with the other person. That is why it is not working out for them. Narcissistic abuse is something where there are different kind of narcissists that they, someone who's actually openly shows up to be that person. They are hot and cold. They are very selfish. They are very reckless. They are very, show off. They win you over, then they will throw you out like nothing. And there are coward narcissists who are like literally cowards. They cannot stand up for somebody else. They cannot speak up to somebody else. They cannot support somebody else. They would rather treat their own people in a very cruel, very condensating manner while treating everybody else in a most kindest, gentlest, pleasant way. The word they say, the angel in the street and the devil in the house. That is usually what covert narcissists do. So it's unless you live with that kind of a people, it's hard to notice a covert narcissist. So usually what happens is with the narcissistic abuse, the people who are abused, the victims, either they are taught that this is how life is, or they are made to think that there is no other way to live because they are mentally in some way dependent on that person. Either it's financial dependency, emotional dependency, or some kind of attachment. It's called codependency because they know it's negative for them, suffocating, because anything that suffocates within means it is not right for you. Many people want to leave. I'm only speaking about a romantic relationship because if somebody, even narcissistic abuse happen in a platonic relationship, I'll come by one. Let's start with the platonic relationship. For example, if a person who's always kinder and gentler, always giving, adjusting, compromising, sacrificing, self-sacrificing, doesn't stand up and says, no, this is not happening, it's like, no, we are friends, no, so this is how it is, otherwise I'm going to lose that kind of friend, that kind of mentality, because they do not want to lose that other person. So that other person, however they behave, this person start to accept every single behavior of such person. If somebody does that kind of a behavior in a platonic relationship, it invites people who are not good for you. It is same in a romantic relationship, but romantic relationships are completely different. Many times people speak about narcissistic abuse only in a romantic relationship, because when they get married or they're in a romantic relationship and certain things happen, cheating or financial recklessness, physical, mental, psychological abuse, financial abuse means using this person for a financial reasons, and making, narcissistic people, they have a habit of separating their victims from all the loved ones. Means they isolate their victims, and victim only does it to please the narcissist because they think that is how, let's not make this person angry. So they cut their ties with their friends, they don't go out and meet their friends and family, they don't share their problems with their own parents, because if they tell them this is happening, that is happening, and they will ask about these kind of things, and when this narcissistic person knows about it, then the problem starts at home. So many people keep quiet without telling anybody what they're suffering. It's because if they open up their mouth to somebody, it will come back as another form of abuse to them. Many people use finance as a control method to control their victims. So these people who want to leave narcissistic abuse, they are not able to leave because either they are tied down to this person financially because they are not financially independent to leave, or they have children and they are made to think that they are supposed to stay in that kind of relationship for the children because it's better, because the usually if the guy is a narcissist, he is a father and such things. If this is a female, men also think twice before leaving that kind of relationship because they are emotionally involved, they have a children with such people. And lot of time what happens, it happens to both the gender. I'm not talking about just men or women. A narcissist can be anybody. A narcissist is somebody who would never let their victims go away from them. Only when they want to discard, then they will do it. So there are different kind of a narcissism exist. Covert narcissists are the one that people need to be very careful, because unless you become their romantic partner or their husband or wife, it's very hard to notice them unless you actually have a very in-depth relationship with that kind of person. You notice such person. What happens in a normal relationship is a person is healthy means another person is also healthy. My point is, a narcissist always try to find people who are ready to be victims. Means a narcissist spots those people who accept such narcissistic behavior because of their own kindness. People who are too much kind, too much empathetic, the people who are born as an empath. These empathetic people who are empaths usually are molded into being an empath because of the suffering they themselves had in their life. It is just that they were resilient enough to not to succumb to the suffocation, suffering, misery of their own life. So instead of internalizing that suffocation, these empathetic people try to see goodness in everybody. They give benefit of the doubt to everybody, even to strangers, because when they were kids, they wanted somebody to console them, they wanted somebody to listen to them, support them, love them, be there for them, made them feel seen, heard, listened, made them they wanted that somebody in their life to provide them that feelings, that emotions, that experience that they themselves wanted, which they did not receive. So these empathetic people, extreme empaths, are those people who grew up trying to be there for somebody else because there were no one else for them as a children. So when they grow up, they try to do those kind of things to somebody else because once they wanted that to happen to them, since they never got it, now they try to be that person to somebody else because they see victims everywhere. They try to be kinder to everybody. Their heart melts too easily. It's easy to manipulate such empathetic people. Not everybody. They are not fools. They can be very much educated, very much intuitive people. They are very much, very intelligent people, very wise people. But their kindness is the reason they give benefits to other people. Take them for granted because they say, oh, it's okay, because they were never shown the kindness when they were kids. Many empaths, they attract narcissistic people. They never realize that they are the problem. If you do not open the door to somebody, nobody will be able to get in. That is the thing. My point of this video is, when a person usually experiences narcissistic abuse, either they are already in a romantic relationship, and lot of people only realize it when it's too hard for them to experience that suffocation longer. Some people live that way for decades of their life because they don't have any they don't know where to go, they don't have any support system. Even if they want to run, either it's physically abusive relationship, so they cannot go anywhere, their parents are not supportive, they are not educated enough to get a job even if they want to, Even if they try to do it, it's not enough to live independently. They think about children a lot. There are a lot of, depending on the culture, religion, geographical places, the culture, society, family system, how their mentality is, how much they're in love with themselves, uh, how much they are ready to prioritize themselves over their own children, because a lot of people stay in narcissistic relationship for their children, thinking, otherwise children will be suffering if they leave. But actually what happens is, if they leave, that actually is good for the children. It's up to them to make a decision, because everybody's life is different. I cannot say such things. But usually narcissistic family, it affects children a lot, so it's better to take that kind of things away. What happens is, when a victim suddenly realizes that they are in a narcissistic abuse, they have lost, usually what happens is they have already lost their confidence in themselves. They have forgotten who they used to be. Their identity is lost, their connection with the people lost, their interest in life is lost, their you know desires are completely changed. They cannot recognize themselves anymore exactly how they used to be before they got into that kind of a narcissistic relationship. And when they suddenly wake up from it, it is like unbelievable. This is what I am. That is how usually victims think. And suddenly the feeling of betrayal comes to them, because they knew there was something wrong. It is because their ability to endure negative things. They kept telling, no, things will change. This is, they themselves gave the explanation for the behavior of the narcissist person, whether it's a financial control, or anger issues, hitting them, or manipulating them, or cheating, whatever it is. It's different for everybody, and based on cultural values, it becomes even different for everyone. So when this person suddenly realizes, they're in a narcissistic abuse, first thing what happens is the extreme suffocation. What to do now, where to go? Because narcissistic abuse is something that changes the brain of the victims. They feel so hopeless, helpless. Even if there is a path in front of them, they hesitate to take that path. It is not that they are less intelligent. It is that forcefulness, that manipulation of that narcissistic person for years, sometimes multiple decades, people suffer that relationship. It makes them very, very docile, very I wouldn't even say cow, because cow tend to hit anyway. Very docile, very they lose that desire to say no to that narcissistic person, because if they say no, their problem starts. So the personality of this victim completely changes. So the idea that they want to leave that relationship. But there are a lot of people who have some friends, they suddenly realize that they need help, they go back and contact their lost family connections or friends, and suddenly says, this is why I never connected with you for this years. Now I want to get out. Please help me. There are a lot of people who do that, and some people find themselves, courage to do that kind of thing to themselves. There are a lot of people, because a lot of people, for example, women who quit their job to stay as a housewife, and after a decade they suddenly realize that they want to leave, because the relationship is not working, not because for other reason, because the person is very narcissistic. If the woman is having a lot of self-love, even after working that many years and having that much career experiences, she might still doubt herself because of the gap of those 10 years. So there are a lot of things going on, so it's very different for everybody. My point of this video is, it's normal that they start to blame the narcissistic person. And what happens is, if somebody is in a narcissistic abuse, if that person is very much, very empathetic, very kind, very sensitive, emotionally in-depth person, it affects them physically, not just mentally and psychologically. It affects them physically. The lot of symptoms manifest in their biological body as well. Lot of health issues, skin issues, irritations in the stomach, heartburn, constipation, or what do you call it, whenever they think of that narcissistic person, they want to go to toilet because it's an emotional response to those kind of a people. And lot of times lot of chronic disease also happens because they bottle up that emotions. It's a very dangerous, very bad thing. If you bottle up those emotions, it's always better to let them out. But narcissistic people never let their victims express their truest emotions. That is why these people internalize that emotions. It affects them physically. So when that person suddenly realizes that, oh, this is how it is, and they want to get out, anybody who want to get out of the narcissistic abuse, and once they get out, it becomes really hard for them to forgive, because no matter what, it is uncomparable. It's uncomparable. Whatever they went through with the narcissistic person, it's incomparable. So that pain is very much harder to let go. But what happens is, uh, they don't realize it, that it did not started. It did not started when they got into that romantic relationship. It started with the family that they are born into. There were some issues in the family that they themselves were born into. Because of that, they had to learn certain behaviors, thoughts, responses, reactions to life, decision making. Their mentality changed because of how they were growing up in the family that they were born into, which made them certain person, which attracted narcissistic people. If it can be a very long process to heal from a narcissistic abuse. The memory power changes. Sometimes if they are bilingual, they may forget some words, even something simple as scissors. They may not remember how to say scissor in another language. The memory problem. This emotional, dissociation with lot of things, not showing interest in life, not showing or some kind of a coping mechanism. They're starting, their own addictions to cope this narcissistic abuse, and as a result some other issues, eating disorders. This is just one of the things happens because of the narcissistic abuse, because they don't know how to control their emotions, and as a coping mechanism they're addicted to something, maybe watching something, drinking something, eating something, or indulging in something sensual activities. um, if it is something music, that is fine, but there are people who do that a lot, like drinking, drugs, smoking, eating habits, like food addiction, addiction to social media, or addiction to drinking, drugs, anything. It can be a coping mechanism, because of them going through that narcissistic abuse, and they used it as a coping mechanism to come out of that suffocation while still having that life with a narcissist, because they don't know what is wrong in that relationship, why they are suffocating, because they never think usually the other person is the problem. They think, usually victims think there is something wrong with them, usually, and not in all relationship, because the narcissistic people usually make their victims feel guilty for every single thing. Even if they are driving, if they miss the direction, even if the person who's driving knows that it's their fault, they'll start to tell the other person, the victim, that it's their fault. They find a reason to blame the victim always and make them guilty about every single thing. So it sits in the head of a victim, that that anxiousness, that they're the one who's wrong. Narcissistic people try very best to make it about themselves. No matter what, they are the center of the attraction. They want to be the center of the attraction. They never let their children or wife or husband, whatever that it is, celebrate something. They always try to block it. They always try to say, no, don't be happy, you're just getting old anyway, why you're celebrating your birthday, those kind of things. always like a party pooper. They always says there is always something negative that they will tell if their life partners or children celebrating something. They always say something so negative to break that happiness of others. You know, trying to smash the cake, or trying to eat the cake and then trying to be surprised. Oh, was that your birthday cake? I didn't know. Those kind of things. Or doing something, even children wouldn't do those kind of things. And then trying to spin that on the victim, that you made this happen and because of that I became this way. You are the reason I am this way. So the victims usually think that they are the problem. Usually that happens. No, it takes sometimes, it takes somebody to have the love for themselves to realize that they are not the problem. But usually, these narcissistic people grab onto those people who are really empathetic people. So these empathetic people have a tendency to easily forgive. They also have a thinking that they are lesser, or their thinking is very genuinely good. So they easily believe, or they're easily manipulated sometimes. No matter whatever the education is, no matter what the intellectual capacity of that person is, it is the empath. This is empath. This is because of that empathy they suffer. So if you're such a person who's really in that kind of a narcissistic abuse, either getting out of it or gotten out of it, it is totally understandable. From a personal point of view, it is totally understandable that the kind of anger comes out, the kind of suffocation that you all feel. It's totally understandable, because nobody can understand unless they themselves has went through some serious narcissistic abuse in their life. But let me tell you one thing very clearly. Just the way that person was the reason of your suffering, you also need to change your personality to stop that kind of thing from happening. It doesn't start because that person walked into your life. It started because you were that person that made that person walk into your life. Sometimes it is not your fault. It is just that instead of blaming yourself, it is your responsibility to start prioritizing yourself, start loving yourself more, putting your needs, your desires, your opinion, your heart's desires first, and not to care about what other things of you when you're coming out of this kind of a narcissistic abuse. Instead of getting anger on that person, using that anger to build your own life is way better. Using that energy as a push for yourself to create a happier life, to heal yourself from that, is way better. And one more thing I want to tell, because there are a lot of women who coming out of this kind of narcissistic abuse, and those men who's coming out of the narcissistic abuse, having that anger towards that person, it's a normal thing. If you really want to heal yourself faster from a very spiritual understanding, it's way better, it's faster. If you really want to heal faster, decide that, do you want to remember the suffering and suffer longer time, or do you want to heal faster? Do you like that pain and misery and suffocation, or you want that misery and suffocation to go faster? If you want your misery, your suffocation, your pain, that frustration to go out faster, then one way to do that is to forgive. They will never come back to say apologize. Do not expecting a single thing is way better. Even if they apologize, it is never meaningful. They don't mean it. They are not sincere. It is not truthful, and they end up doing the same thing. Narcissistic people do not change. Even if you go for a counseling, they may become better at pretending to be that better person, but they will never change. Narcissistic people are created. Empathetic people are created by the circumstances that they are grown into. Empath is somebody who experienced a lot of hardship in life. Instead of turning into a narcissistic person, they remain that soft-hearted person, kinder, gentler one, who instead of taking that anger on somebody else for their suffocation, they decided that they're gonna remain that good people, kind people, and they use their energy. They want to use their energy to heal others, whether it's animal or other people or children or whatever. Narcissistic people are those people who are also grown up in a family of neglect, abuse, some kind of thing, toxicity, and they were not able to take that, and they see everybody as a perpetrator. They are the victim in every situation because they couldn't take that as a child, so they became that takers. So they are also made to be that way because they are the weaker one. Empaths are the one who are stronger one, but it's not your virtue, it is a trauma response. So instead of blaming each other, what I would totally suggest, you know, unconditionally forgiving them is the best way to go ahead. And forgiving yourself is also very good because many people start to berate themselves, how can I let this happen to me? You know, I already seen the red flags a long time ago. How did I let that happen? You know, this many years passed. I wanted to live, but I could. No, you left me. Very good. So if you're that kind of a person, forgive yourself. Completely forgive that other person as well. But never, it's very better because never to give that kind of a person another chance in life is also very good. Because narcissistic people will never change. Narcissistic people will never change. Because they are wired, their brain has changed already in that way. So it is my suggestion that if you're somebody who came out of the narcissistic abuse, remember the way narcissistic people entered your life to create that problem. It is because your personality, your way of thinking, your way of being allowed them made them little bit easier. It's your duty to change that. And so how can you do that? Let me start with something. Usually what people don't realize it, their behavior is also the reason of them suffering in life. From a spiritual perspective, the way you have been grown into, it's because your parents or whoever raised you and the influence that you have on yourself from outside, whether your family you are grown into, your siblings, your parents, your grandparents, your uncle, aunt, anybody who has influence on you, and the way that you have been grown into. If you're, if you yourself is, coming from a narcissistic family, it's possible that you become an empath. But there are certain people who are actually born in a good family. They don't know how narcissistic people are. They consider everybody as good, so they are like clueless about these kind of things. If you're that kind of person, it's your time to, putting that boundaries to people. If you have a plate of food and if you're really starving, you may give that food. If somebody suddenly, a stranger comes to you and asks you for food, you may give one day. What happens if every single time that happens? How long that you can take it, isn't it? So it becomes your responsibility to protect what is yours. Empaths have a habit of handing themselves over to somebody else that easily, because they are not taught to put boundaries to people. They think, speaking up means either they have to fight or they have to, the relationship might change with that person if they fight with another person. It is all the trauma response. The fear comes from what happens if I fight with this person, what will happen? They may change, they may leave, they may try to get angry, the fear, the intimidation might happen. These kind of things, a lot of things affects an empath. So it is my suggestion, if you're an empath, if you're somebody who came out of these kind of abusive situations in your life, it's always best to choose yourself. And one thing that you lacked is loving yourself. A lot of people they misunderstand that having self-respect is ego, because usually a lot of cultures teach their kids to be humble, be humble, be humble, and don't do this, don't do that, because it's, it looks arrogant to people. Don't sit that way, don't do that, don't wear this dress, and don't behave this way, don't speak against these people, they will think about, you as a rude person, this kind of thing. No, self-respect and ego is a two completely different thing. Many people misunderstand, especially people who are indoctrined to think this way. They end up thinking that, having self respect and speaking up is ego, because they were forced to believe that way. If you're such person, learn to differentiate between what is self respect is and what is ego is. Having a self respect is what makes, unwanted people out of your life. If you hand yourself easily to others, there will be always be people who are ready to take you for granted. But we don't like that, isn't it? It's not good for us. So my point is, I'll come to the point. This video actually was why I was making is, people who came out of a narcissistic abuse, usually they take their anger on the narcissistic person, that they're this, they're that, they're that, and it delays their healing. The faster you understand, it takes a two to do the tango, without blaming yourself, absolutely without blaming yourself. First step is unconditionally forgiving that person and yourself. And second thing, you have to decide. It's up to you, but it is better to decide that you want to heal from that narcissistic abuse. So if you were depending on that narcissistic person for something, whether it's finance or emotional, dependency, coming out of that codependency is a very important thing, because once you become independent in that area that you were used to be dependent on that person, it heals faster. And third thing is realizing that your personality is the thing that you need to change as well. It may look like, no, there is nothing, there is nothing wrong with you. There is nothing wrong with you. It is just that your life probably has made you value yourself lesser. So you were kind to others, but you were probably not kind to yourself, because you thought that was a arrogance or ego, or this is not something you should be doing. A lot of social cultural belief systems, the family teachings, religious beliefs, they force people to sacrifice, compromise. They force certain belief system on people. If it is bad, it is bad. Falling in love with your own self, making decision based on what is good for you, following your heart, which is always good. So these people, instead of blaming the narcissist, if you really want to heal, remember that first thing is that forgiveness. Second thing is you start value yourself more. And third thing is realizing that your personality also need to change. Making decisions to keep people away is way better than feeling like, what if I offend them? So what? If people get offended because you want to protect yourself, it's better for you, isn't it? They will never be able to be there for you. Their opinion doesn't matter if you have to suffer. People do a lot because they think, what others will think of them. What will people gossip about them? So what? Your life is important, isn't it? So this happens because of lack of self-love. Because these people they were taught to not value themselves as a kids. So the problem is in the family that you were born into. Most likely, I wouldn't say every single thing, every single case, but most likely you were born into a family, either itself was a narcissistic in nature, that is why you became that empath, or you were born into such a nice family where you received all the love, support, and you have never experienced that negativity in your life to protect yourself, because you thought that is how life is, and suddenly narcissistic abuse made you completely different person to realize, oh, these kind of people also exist. So usually people blame themselves. The narcissistic abuse victims, they blame themselves. There's a lot of phases goes on. They blame themselves sometimes, that they are the one who let this kind of thing happen. No, forgive yourself, and if you really want that healing to happen faster, analyze your own personality, come out of that codependency, that the thing that made you actually stick yourself to that narcissistic people for that long, and sorting that issue, whether it's a financial dependency or you were dependent on them for some reason, to become completely independent in that area would help greatly. And last thing is, people doesn't correlate narcissistic abuse with their own personality, because they do not see any problem with their person, because usually kind people are the one who are, they feel nice when somebody calls them, you're such a nice person. Being a nice person and being a good person is two different things. Somebody compromising, sacrificing, pleasing others at their own cost, giving up their right, giving up their heart's desire to somebody else, letting people walk over them, and then in return being called as a nice person, while they feel that suffocation from within. It is not a nice thing to do. People who respect themselves, value themselves, who has a lot of love and respect for themselves, they know their worth without the ego, and they speak their heart out without having any fear of retaliation from anybody. Why? Because if somebody retaliates, that is how it is. If that person doesn't like me, he is free to leave, that kind of personality. That is actually good. These people are the people who has the ability to say no. Then if they say yes, then that is actually a good person. A good person who's good to others but also good to themselves. A nice person is usually a person who's good to everybody but is not good to themselves, they are like abandoning and being cruel to themselves. They do not realize it because they were never taught to see life in that way. So this is my suggestion as a summary, that I would say, if you're somebody who came out of or coming out of a narcissistic abuse, it takes certain time to come out of that feeling of hopelessness, that anger, that suffocation, that feeling like a victim. Take your time. One thing is, if you really want to heal yourself faster, unconditionally forgiving that person and yourself and never letting that person back into our life is helpful. Second thing, coming out of the codependency, the thing that made you depend on that person, which did not allow you to leave, sorting that area in your life, whether it's I already talked about it, finance or emotional dependency or something, here it helps. And third thing, looking at your own personality and developing a new behavior system, which you make a decision based on your heart's desire, based on whether you really want to say yes, whether you really want to do this or not. It feels like a suffocation, means learning to say no and not giving up yourself easily to others, not letting others take you for granted, and not doing anything just because somebody says that you're a nice person, kind of a thing. Only making choices in life based on your own understanding. This is good for me, this makes me happy, that is why I'm doing it. Otherwise it's a no, no matter who says what. If you develop that kind of a thicker skin, it's actually very helpful. People may say a lot of things because people's opinions are their opinions. It feels different if a person suddenly changes and it becomes inconvenient for them. It's our responsibility to prioritize ourselves if we are surrounded by cruel or selfish or narcissistic people. This is what I would say. And another thing is, if we have a support system like a loving family system, friends, taking help from them, open up to them, helps a lot. If you do not have anybody, doing a lot of volunteering things, sitting in the sun, giving yourself some mental exercises by taking up some creative activities like a hobby, or going for some kind of artistic classes, pottery classes, drawing classes, stitching, start doing something new like a knitting, or anything that you once wanted to do as a child, that would help greatly. Even if it seems like a child is doing, why not start it again? Music class, dance class, whatever. And focusing on healthy eating helps a lot emotionally, because it's correlated, dropping all the processed food, If you have any addiction, yeah, that's one point I had to mention. Coming out of any addictions, if you have any, people who run to do certain things, whenever coping mechanism is something, if you have sudden anxiety or some kind of confusion, or if you feel suffocated, people run to do something, watching social media, eating something, um, um, they forget themselves. They just need a reason to forget that pain because they cannot face it. That is how they cope with themselves. There are a lot of things that you can do. People drink, people take drugs, people, um, food addiction for another reason. If you have that kind of issue with yourself, come out of it. Find a way and strength to come out of it. This is my suggestion. This is one of the most important things, because emotional regulation helps a lot to heal ourselves from the childhood trauma if you had received in your childhood. And another thing is, if you don't have anybody else, instead of feeling lonely, try to be there for yourself by creating a life where you do not have to run away from. Pick up smaller things, go for a walk, eat something very healthy, cut out all the sugars, processed food, and eating something really, energizes you, cutting out this oily food, processed food, anything that make you feel sluggish, cutting that out, and changing that, the way you eat food, and also cutting a lot of negative influences. If you're surrounded by a lot of toxic people, removing them from your life, or not letting them talk to you by, there is a method that's called, gray rock method. You can google it. Moving away, or sun actually helps a lot. Instead of feeling depressed, sitting under the sun for a while every single day, and drinking a lot of water, giving some exercises to the body. Even if you just go for a walk, that's good enough. You don't have to go to a gym to work out if you don't want to do it, because people lose motivation to do when they are abused in a narcissistic abuse, or especially when they are recovering from it, if they don't have anybody to understand their situation. And because nobody can understand what they are going through, it's normal thing. Reading some good books, positive books, and it's very important that, it may feel nostalgic to read some quotes or sad, listening to sad songs and crying over it. Instead of that, try to pick up some positive songs, because that is how manifestation also works. Pick up positive songs, listening to positive quotes. There are a lot of videos you can find in YouTube, how to change your subconscious mind, trying to find that. And we can change our subconscious mind by affirming it whenever we get up early in the morning, by affirming what positive thing that we want to happen in our life. We can change that. You can google it for a detailed description. This is already 40 minutes into the video, so I'm just pointing out the things that you can do as a person who came out of or coming out of this. So if you want your healing to be faster, this is how it can be done. And making certain changes in your own personality, and look back into your own family that you were born into. Did you come out of a family where you were forced to be the one that you are, or it's just, you need to make any changes because of that? If that is it is, then it's better to keep that kind of family away as also good. What is the point of jumping from one narcissistic person to another narcissistic person? Why I'm saying this? Because a female with a narcissistic parents, especially if she has a narcissistic father, if she is not healed, it's highly likely that it's highly possible that she will try to find a partner that is equal, same as her father, without even realizing, because that is how the brain works. It feels like a normal thing to receive that kind of, it doesn't feels right to be in a, for example, not exciting enough relationship, because they never felt that, calmness in their family life when they were kids. So these kind of things is different for everybody, because in some cultures people date and marry, some cultures is directly they get married, Sometimes they do not have any, choices or chances, so it's different for everybody. But it's, if you don't have anybody else, you just ask help from the divine. That's, I would say. You don't have to be religious, you don't have to believe in any god, you don't have to, do anything for them. You just literally sit down and close your eyes and ask for help and believe that it will come. That is what I would say. My correlation is a narcissistic abused victim has to change their own personality as well to stop those kind of a narcissistic people again from walking into their life. And they have to, it's better if they analyze their own birth family to understand why they became the person that they became, that attracted that narcissistic people in their life. This is just a contemplation, so they can make a change in their own life, positive change in their life. It's always better to follow what heart says, and making a decision based on what is actually good for us, what actually makes us happy, what is need to be done sometimes as well. There is a balance between those three things is kind of a right thing to do, in my opinion. And it is totally up to you, because everybody's life is different, everybody's emotional ability to handle things are different, their finance is different, their culture is different, their religion is different, their society is different. Sometimes even if they want to do, there are a lot of things are there to make them feel like they cannot do it. But if you really want to do it, you can do it. People do a lot